is here. You know, when everybody in your comment section collectively joins together just to warn you about a certain arc in the future that will be very depressing and very hard to watch, that's when you have me scared. And this episode just marks the beginning of that, and I can already see where we're getting into this sadness, this psychological trauma. It's going to be a wild ride, but I cannot wait for all the depression and the emotion and just everything to come over me as we go through this arc over the next few weeks. Hello everybody, I am PhenomSage, and welcome back to another Houseki no Kuni Land of the Lustrous episode review. Today we're going to be talking about episode 7, Hibernation. Real quick, before we get into this review, I just wanted to say that that sickness that I mentioned earlier in the week in that Made in Abyss review is not gone. I thought it would be, but apparently it's only gotten worse from here. So if I sound weird, if I sound congested, that's because I am. Hopefully I can edit it together so it's not too noticeable, but if I sound off, that's why. I guess I just could not handle the winter for my health. And I love that we're entering this winter arc right as it's getting colder and we're entering winter in real life. I don't know, I just find that really fitting. As it's getting colder outside, we're getting into this chilly episode filled with emotions. And if you know my reviews, you know I'm going to start at the part that affected me the most. And every single time in Houseki no Kuni, it's always at the end. The final few minutes just are always perfection. And that is no exception for this episode. I have been commenting on Phos and Phos's development and self-doubt for a while now in this series. The direction and writing has really subtly built that up. Not where it's so obvious that it's like, oh, she just hates herself now. But you can slowly see Phos failing more and more in every single episode. And while she tries to bounce back from that, keep up her peppy, enthusiastic self, her more sarcastic self, you can't just keep failing like that and not let it affect you. And Phos is definitely feeling that, and by the end of this episode it reaches a high point, if you will. Antarc, a new character introduced in this episode, we'll get into them in a second, makes a really dumb statement while reporting to Sensei, saying that Phos has kept up with her more than she thought Phos would, but that she wishes that Phos had arms to match the agate legs that she has currently. And I mentioned this directly. I said back when Phos got her legs, I said, so you could technically just cut off your arms and replace it with a material and it would work out fine, right? But I dismissed that because it's already a rare case as it is for these legs to be working. There's no way somebody would risk that just to get stronger arms. But at the end of this episode, Phos does it. She goes for it. She's just sitting on the snow with that blade in her hand, and she just contemplates. She says, should I do this? Should I cut off my arms so I can hopefully get better arms and actually be a use to somebody? And I love that we've reached this point with Phos, that Phos has just failed so much and can't keep up with anybody that she is legit thinking about cutting off her own arms just so she can get stronger ones. The way that this scene is built up is so haunting too. The OST, the camera work, it's all just so well done. Luckily, Phos isn't so down on her luck that she actually goes through with it. She actually calls herself crazy, because it is crazy, Phos. You don't need to cut off your arms to be of use to somebody. But of course, she's feeling backed into a corner. She feels like she isn't doing much, so it makes sense why she would resort to such a thing. But she doesn't. She denies herself until the microorganisms in the floes underneath the water start tempting Phos to do it. They say, put your arms in the water and we'll take them off for you. Don't worry about anything else. They even straight up admit that they don't know what's going to happen. They just say something will happen. You will get arms that are better. You will become stronger. You just need the courage to put your arms into the water so we can take them off. And obviously that's a very bad idea, and it's interesting that they go this route with the floes, because I'll talk about this later, but I thought they were going to go a completely different route with the floes. But I guess hearing that from somebody else makes Phos consider it even more to put her arms into the water, get them off, and find new arms that will make her stronger. Now, I'm not exactly sure how this works, because we are told that the floes are actually this giant ice structure with all the microorganisms in it, so I don't know how just putting her arms into the water lets them take them off. I don't know if they're in the water themselves. If you can explain that, that would make a lot more sense to me. But Phos eventually denies that as well. She realizes that it's dumb to lose her arms in the first place. She needs to get stronger on her own. But as she backs up, she accidentally trips and falls into the water behind her head first. I thought she was going to lose a lot more than her arms diving into here, but Antarc saves her just in time, pulls her out, but as she pulls her out, we see that Phos no longer has her arms. And how this happened in that water in that amount of time and didn't cut anything else off, I don't know. I don't know if the floes purposely only cut off her arms or how this works at all, but the important part is that Phos does not have her arms anymore. And Antarc says earlier in the episode that the floes grind those gems to dust. So I'm pretty sure those arms are done. They will never be reattached. They will never be found again. They are gone. And this is going to be a huge turning point for Phos as a character. It'll be interesting to see what her reaction is next episode when she sees that she doesn't have arms. I wonder if she'll actually be relieved or happy that she doesn't have her arms anymore. And of course, losing two important body parts like that, huge parts of her figure, Phos has lost a ton of memories with that, and I dread seeing what Phos has forgotten this time. This is going to be an issue if Phos keeps losing memories because she'll lose all of the connections that she made with everybody. Who knows if she might even forget about Cinnabar? I sure hope not. I doubt that they would go that far. Losing Phos's true purpose, like I think that's the one thing Phos will hold on to. But everything else, I'm not sure about. But yeah, overall just an excellent ending. I love that we've reached this point with Phos where she doubts herself so much that she is almost willing to cut off her own arms. And judging by the preview for next episode, we're going to get into a lot deeper characterization for Phos. Now let's get into the build up to this entire scene and this entire sequence for Phos. It is winter, everyone else has gone to sleep because obviously during winter there's not nearly enough light for anyone to have enough energy to go out, so they leave it up to a new character introduced this episode, Antarcticite, to patrol the area, take care of Lunarians, and do other things that we will discuss later on in the review. And it feels like every single time this series introduces a new character that plays an integral role to the story, they're always just the coolest. We had Daya, we had Bort, we had Yellow last episode, and now we have Antarcticite. And of course, Antarcticite is a very cool character. What's interesting about them is that they are actually, I would consider them the most masculine character in the cast that we have so far besides Sensei himself. So masculine, in fact, that I almost considered just referring to him as a he in this review. I'll be interested to see what you guys refer to them as, but I'm going to keep it she just to keep that entire cast consistent, but I feel like you could refer to her as whatever and it would just make sense. And something I did not expect was getting that Maria Issei greatness in this series. If you're not familiar with her as an actress, you will of course know her. If you're familiar with my channel, you will know her as Reg in Made in Abyss, and also Killua in Hunter x Hunter 2011. So she's clearly very talented, and of course plays young boys, which is probably why I'm hearing that boyish tone in her voice for Antarcticite. What I found the most interesting about Antarcticite is that they're actually really harsh. The first dialogue with Phos is pretty mean to say, talking about how Phos should be ashamed of herself for barely being stronger than Antarc but still not doing anything to help the group, or how Phos was so scared that she couldn't do anything in the fight with the Lunarians with Amethyst. Like, we've seen the other gyms tease and sometimes be a little bit mean to Phos, but not to this degree. But I do enjoy by the end of the episode that they formed somewhat of a bond, Phos constantly going after Antarc and trying to learn and train with her. But in contrast with this more harsh tone with Phos, the first appearance we actually get of Antarcticite is talking to Sensei. And it's no surprise to us that every single gym loves Sensei, but the love that these gyms share for him is made even more evident in this episode than it was in the last episode. The first thing that Antarcticite says to Sensei is, "Can we do our yearly tradition?" And Sensei is just like, "Of course." And Antarcticite just runs forward and jumps and hugs Sensei, and I love this bond that everybody shares with him as just this father figure. During this episode, we get Phos teamed up with Antarc as everyone else is asleep, and we see that Antarc is clearly very powerful. And as Antarcticite trains Phos to do the jobs that she does herself, we see Phos slowly getting the hang of it. How last episode Phos was barely able to pick up a sword, and now she can pick one up with ease, and this one looks like it could be even heavier than the one last episode. She's starting to gain control of her speed, and she practices some of the maneuvers that Antark does in this episode. So where I thought this was going before the end of the episode is that we'd get some sort of training montage and Phos would start gaining strength and start feeling more useful. But of course, things can never go that smoothly, and Phos just can't keep up no matter what. She's just too weak as a gym. And like I said, I just love the way that they build this into Phos' characterization and the self-doubt that she has. Probably the most interesting aspect about this episode though, other than the obvious Phos' characterization at the end, is this entity known as the ice floes. We see them throughout, and we see that Antarcticite's job is to eliminate them because the ice grinding together creates these really horrifying noises that wake up the other gems who are sleeping right now. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what these ice floes are. Because during the episode and at the end of the episode, we hear them talking. We hear them speaking to Phos. And we learn that they are actually microorganisms themselves in the minerals, and that's how they're communicating with them. And after learning this, I was kind of shocked, and I was like, wait, are they going to create some sort of conflict with how Phos and Antarcticite are actually killing minerals and microorganisms just like themselves? But as we learn later on, these minerals are more like dregs of organisms from the beginning of time. So I would more so compare them to like empty souls that still have a voice than actual people. But that doesn't stop them from communicating to Phos and telling her to give up both of her arms. So I wonder if there is something in there, a being that is trying to lead these gems astray. To add on to that, Antarcticite makes a note and says that at one time, Sensei referred to these ice floes as sinners. So there are clearly details about these organisms that we're not getting that are probably crucial to understanding what they are and what they used to be. It could be that these are straight up some of the humans that fled and ended up being swallowed by the sea back in the inception of this Earth. One more note I'd like to make is that when these ice floes first appear, it is just expertly done. The direction and the sound design both just communicate the scale of these giant ice figures just so well. As Phos looks upon this giant ice mountain rising out of the ocean, I too felt that awe and wonder seeing it. So it feels like I have to make a note on the direction every single episode. It's just so amazing. One question I'd like to pose though is this natural winter? The amount of snow and the level of which things freeze over on this island is pretty abnormal if you ask me. So I wonder if winter is more extreme in this version of Earth because of the way the planet has rearranged itself and how everything is on the Earth at this point in time. It's just interesting to think about, because obviously I don't think I could chalk that up to just being like far north on the Earth, because every other season on this island is really sunny and really beautiful, whereas this winter is especially cold and harsh compared to normal winter. I don't know, it's not really too important, but it just made me think about the state that this planet is in this story. I do want to discuss some of the direct follow-ups from last episode. It kind of cuts ahead a bit in time, and there wasn't really as much character drama from last week's cliffhanger that I thought there would be. It was more so just Phos' mentality of, oh, I didn't get punished for this. I feel so terrible that I didn't have to take responsibility for messing up that one time. Which is fine too. It's not really a criticism that there's no follow-up. I just expected some kind of follow-up with Bort just lacing into Phos for not doing anything. But what's interesting is that Amethyst was actually able to be reformed, both Amethyst twins. So I guess that wasn't nearly as life-threatening as it looked, but it looked pretty horrifying and life-threatening last episode. So I'm just glad Amethyst is okay. It seems like a lot of the fear in this show doesn't really come from saying, oh no, that character is going to die, but it's more so the psychological impact that these things have on Phos, where the real fear sets in. And in all fairness, last episode I was equally horrified by both things. I was horrified that Amethyst wouldn't be able to be pieced back together, but I was also just horrified at Phos's expressions and just seeing how devastated and hopeless she looked, watching as she couldn't do anything to help Amethyst in this time of need. So I'm completely okay with that. In fact, I actually like more psychological based fear as opposed to just saying, oh no, they're gonna die. Like it works in some instances, but it's also very tired. Like, I like more unique situations like this where the depression and the sadness don't really come from dying. It comes from seeing these characters' emotional states change in a negative way. Also interesting to note that the trap last episode, I was right, that trap is new. They had never seen anything like it before. And it's safe to assume that any new trap that we see from the Lunarians is new to the gyms as well. But what's most interesting about that trap is, I should have called this. I don't know why I didn't call this. I guess I just tossed it up as some color design, but the spikes on the trap last episode are actually made out of sapphire, one of the gems that was abducted a long time ago, who was obviously partnered with Yellow, we learned last episode. So I believe this is the second time we've seen the Lunarians using the gems that they've collected as weapons to capture the other gems. The other, of course, being in the first episode when the Lunarians shot arrows made out of Heliodor. One last detail before we end this episode review, the actual hibernation scene where all the gems are covering everything up and then they wear these outfits and go to sleep. I love this section so much. It's very brief, but oh man, they're all just so cute in these outfits. And when they go to sleep and they're laying down on all these blankets, the visuals were just outstanding. It looked like it was taken straight out of a volume cover or just a cover art or cover page from a manga. It was just so well done. The imagery was just so dreamlike and arranged so well, and I guess that makes sense since they're all going to hibernation, they're all sleeping for the winter. But seriously, I just could not praise that enough that I love that whole scene. And speaking of the hibernation, as all these gems are asleep, we actually get another few bits of comedy in this episode that work really well. I cannot praise this series enough for its comedy. I feel like most people won't be walking out of the series praising it as much as everything else, but the comedy is just as well done as the rest of the series. It's always just so well timed, so appropriate. It never feels jarring. It never feels like the tonal shifts are too much, coming from a depressing atmosphere to a comedic atmosphere, and it's never really played up for laughs. The comedy is just so well integrated that it feels natural, but it also just is funny dialogue and funny scenes. So yeah, overall, just another wonderful episode of Houseki no Kuni. Not a single bad episode so far in the series, and we're already halfway through. This is quickly looking to be my favorite series of the year, even surpassing Made in Abyss, which I did not expect. But it is just that good. And next episode looks like it's going to be even better. It looks like it could be an emotional high point for the series thus far. So I am super looking forward to that. Thank you guys for watching. As always, your support, encouragement, comments, likes, everything, they just mean so much to me, and they encourage me to keep making these videos. Stay tuned sometime this week. I don't know when. It might be Tuesday, it might be Thursday. It's going to be sometime this week. I'm going to be releasing a video that highlights some of my plans for the future of this channel. Should be interesting. They're not like huge plans, but they're plans that I have to make future videos, so stay tuned for that if you're interested. Again, thank you for watching, and of course, as usual, have a great day.